I expect to pass through the world but once. Any good, therefore, that I can do, or any kindness I can show to any creature, let me do it now, for I shall not pass this way again.
Today, we are joined by George Nassos, who is, among many things, the author of 15 life lessons I learned from my immigrant parents that you don't learn in school. He's also a respected engineer, academic, and entrepreneur, and longtime advocate for environmental sustainability. George, how are you?
Fine, thank you. And thank you
Good to
for
have you with
inviting
us.
me. This is great.
So let's ask the obvious question. What inspired you to write the book? And why did you feel it was important to share these lessons of your parents at this point in your life?
Well, give it a little background on my parents. My father had a total of 2 years of education because he had to work in the fields. And at the age of 14, he emigrated to the US. And for 4 or 5 years, he shined shoes. And then with his two older brothers, opened up a restaurant that they had for 47 years. My mother had twice the education. She had 4 years, but they put a lot of emphasis on education. And there were two of us in the family, and between us, we earned 6 college degrees
Wow.
from parents with 6 years of education. Our father was very intelligent, had a lot of common sense. He Anything around the house that stopped working, whether it was mechanical or electrical, he would take it apart, figure out what was wrong, and repair it. Our mother, uh, people that got to know her would say she had the equivalent of a PhD in common sense. Um, we learned so much from our parents that I started telling my children and now my grandchildren about what we learned. And I was afraid they might forget what I told them. So I started writing down and I wrote more and more, and it ended up being a book.
Good for you. Good for you. You know, there's some people who would say PhDs and all the brilliant people of today can't do very much. And here you are with your parents who had very little education, but they had the common sense. They knew what to do. It was that, I guess, that era of immigrants who were just so, so special. Um,
Yes, yeah.
your parents came to the US as part of the wave, I'm sure, of immigration, who carried both hardship and deep-rooted traditions with them. Looking back, what parts of their worldview do you find most essential to preserve and pass on, as you said, not only to your children, but to others?
Well, I uh, hate to bring this up, but my parents were not typical Greeks. By not typical Greeks, Greek people tended to um, wanted to achieve wealth and education and basically get ahead of other Greeks.
Mhm.
And my parents, their focus was helping other people. They felt that this was their journey. Um, this virtue was kind of an example of philotimo, the love of honor. And they instilled that in my brother and me. My brother became a doctor, a surgeon. Friends and relatives all went to him for their health issues. And I didn't know this until many years later when one of my cousins came up to me and said, "Did you know that I had this health issue?" I said, "No, how would I know?" "You mean your brother didn't tell you?" I said, "No, he didn't tell me anything about his patients." And they said, "Well, so and so and so and so, we all go to him because he does this for nothing. He doesn't even charge us because he felt that this was his obligation." And I feel the same way, is helping people. And in fact, um, I have a saying that's on for the last 15 to 20 years, it's been on the back of my business card. And let me read it. Here's my
Sure.
business card. I expect to pass through the world but once. Any good, therefore, that I can do, or any kindness I can show to any creature, let me do it now. Let me not defer it, for I shall not pass this way again.
Wow.
And I didn't write this. This came from Stephen Grellet, a French-American
Mm.
religious leader uh, from the 18th century. And it's something that I once I read that, I said, that fits my attitude. And this has been was instilled in my brother and me by our parents, helping other people.
George, many children of immigrants, as you know, grow up balancing the so-called two worlds. How did your parents' Greek Orthodox faith and their identity shape the way they raised you, and how did that shape your understanding of success today?
Well, uh, our parents, mostly my mother, they're very religious.
Mhm.
As an example, my mother would go to the Panagia service, the Vesper service on April 14th at the Assumption Church in Chicago.
Mhm.
And when it ended, she would just stay in the church all night
Hmm.
and be there for the morning service. Something that she truly inspired in us is love in the family. She had two brothers in Tripoli who had the reputation of being the lovingest brothers in Tripoli. They had a business together, shoe store. They sold shoes and repaired shoes. And unfortunately, after they got married, the wives did not get along and broke up that relationship and even broke up their business. And when my mother learned that, she was devastated. And so growing up, she instilled in my brother and me that when you find the woman to marry, you better make sure that she gets along with the other. And my wife and my sister-in-law, people think they're sisters. They get along so well. And
That's
this is
beautiful.
for well over 50 years. So this is something that our parents instilled in us, and we're doing the best we can.
Well, obviously, we spoke here about the church and about your mother's faith and your father's faith, I'm sure. Let's look at the church for a minute. How is the church uniquely positioned, do you think, to pass on, especially to younger generations who might feel somewhat disconnected from our traditions? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that's a good time to talk about the future of our church because I'm reading reports that the younger people are becoming more religious now,
Mhm.
and they're looking for that right church. And if you look at the Christian church timeline, and I remember seeing this in my Bible study class, it starts out in the year 33 at the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And it's a straight line of the Christian church until 1054. And then there's a break. It goes up, which is the formation of the Roman Catholic Church until the year 1517, if I recall. And then there's another segment, and that's the beginning of the Lutheran Church.
Mhm.
And if you continue looking at this timeline, there are a lot of different Christian churches, but it's the Greek Orthodox Church or the Eastern Orthodox Church that is that straight line. And it seems to me that we need to take advantage of that and the fact that we have comfort in being the original church should be something that would inspire the young people. And I think the important thing I see is the English language. Some 80% of our marriages in our church are between a Greek Orthodox and a non-Greek Orthodox,
Right.
which means that at least one of the two doesn't understand the Greek. And it's likely that the Greek Orthodox one doesn't speak Greek either. And so we should really do as much as possible of the service in English.
That's a good perspective. It's a good perspective, and it points out very important parts. And of course, you'll have other people who will say, "Well, you know, it's Hellenistic Greek. It's the Greek of Paul. We need to know what it actually says." But that presupposes that a person is able to translate and then take that lesson and put it in their heart, and that's not very easy. I mean, I studied modern Greek from the time I was 4. I went to seminary, did modern Greek, ancient Greek, Hellenistic Greek, and it's still a challenge. I can understand the desire and the need to know the source, but it's important to speak the language of the country that you are in order to reach the hearts of the people. I think so, don't you?
Yes, um, I spoke only Greek
Hmm.
uh, when I grew up.
Right, me
That's
too.
all we spoke Greek at home.
Yeah.
And when I started school at the age of 5 or 6, I didn't know any English. I went to elementary school here
Same thing.
in Chicago, and I
Yeah.
couldn't speak English. And even though I'm very fluent in Greek, I still don't understand a Greek liturgy.
It makes sense. I mean, I failed reading in the first grade. The teacher called my parents in and they said, well, what's the story? Why can't your child do that? She said, well, I have to tell you, the grandparents live with us and they only speak Greek. But anyway, let's move on. Um, was there a lesson? I know a lot of people are going to agree with this. Was there a lesson from your parents that didn't fully make sense to you until much later in life? Maybe even one that you resisted when you were younger?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that my parents would do often is visit relatives.
Hmm.
Um, Saturday evening, Sunday afternoon, they always would mix with relatives, and they put a lot of emphasis on that. I don't understand why. You
Hmm.
know, their relatives will always be our relatives. And I had a situation. I graduated college at the age I was 25 years old, and I got a job right away. And I told the company I'm not starting for 3 months. And they said, "Why?" Because I'm going away. And a friend of mine and I went to Greece for 8 weeks. This was our first trip to Greece. And my mother said, "Well, you know, when you go to Greece, you have a cousin who lives in the Athens area. You should look her up." I said, "Okay." So I was there a week already, and I thought about that, and I said, "Geez, I better call this cousin up." So I looked her up in the phone book. I found her name. She came to the hotel, and we met in the lobby and talked. I figured if I didn't do this, when I went home, I'd be in big trouble.
Catch
So
the wrath of your mother.
anyway,
Yeah.
after talking to his cousin for about a half hour, at the time she was about, I was 25, she was about 33, 34, had 3 little kids. Anyway, she said, "Okay, George, pack up and check out." I said, "Why? You're not staying here, you're staying at our house."
Mm.
But I'm here with a friend. He's coming too. So we went to their home, and they had a nice house in a suburb of Athens called Chaivati. And my friend and I, we each had our own bedroom, and that was our base for the next 7 weeks.
Wow.
Well, this cousin, she became so close to me. She became like a sister that I never had. And I would communicate with her regularly, at least once a month. Either she would call me or I would call her. And I've seen her children grow up. They've gotten married and they have children. And the oldest daughter, who was 7 years old at the time I met her, she's now a grandmother. And we still communicate. And it's just a great relationship. And had I not made that phone call, this
Mhm.
never would have happened.
Finally, George, one last question. Preserving tradition is one thing, but breathing new life into the community can be just as important. From your perspective, what role does cultural memory, the kind you write about in your book, play in making the church feel alive and even relevant today? And what ideas do you have about how we can both preserve and reinvigorate the church for the next generation?
One of the things that I've talked about, I mentioned earlier this morning, is helping other people. And when I notice people doing the same thing, it really clicks. When I was teaching, I was teaching at a university. I had a student assistant, and I had a new one um, who was a young girl from Hispanic from Monterrey, Mexico. And my mother had just passed away. So I emailed her and told her, I'm sorry, I'm not coming, won't be in for about a week. And I told her why. She responded with an email that had prayers. She says, I'm sending you some prayers that you should read to help you get through this uh, issue. And it's something I'll never forget. And something very similar is the priest at our church. I attend Saints Peter and Paul in Glenview, Illinois. Father Angelo Artemis was the priest at the time. And when my mother passed away, my brother and I had bought 6 grave sites for our parents and ourselves and our spouses. And my father was buried somewhere else. So we had the funeral for my mother, but now we had to disinter my dad to move him to be next to my mother. Father Angelo heard about that, and he said, I want to be there when you do it. And he conducted a special sacrament reuniting the parents like another marriage. And again, it's um, something that I'll never forget. He was meeting the needs of parishioners, and we need more of that. We need to focus on what are the needs of the parishioners, and meeting their needs.
Tell our listeners and our viewers about your book. Where can they get the book?
It's on Amazon. I think it's only 100 pages, and most people read it in a day or two.
Okay. Well, you heard it from George Nassos, the author of 15 Life Lessons I Learned from My Immigrant Parents that you don't learn in school. It's been a very interesting conversation, George. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and it was my pleasure. Thank you, Father Chris.